start. Just
let me share my screen here.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll mute myself now.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to admit everybody now, and then just I'll give you I'll just say when to go, and then just wait a couple of seconds. Thanks a million. Good luck.
Thank you.
Morning. Hi, Suzanne.
Morning.
Hi, everybody. You're very welcome. Can I just ask you if you've just come in to put yourself on mute, and at the end, then we'll be taking questions, and you can unmute and come into the questions then at that stage. Okay. Okay, Rhoda, we're ready to go.
Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to talk to you this morning about Ireland's Open Data Initiative. I'm head of the Open Data Unit in the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform, and I have responsibility for the implementation of Ireland's Open Data Strategy and the transposing of the Open Data Directive, which was introduced in 2019. Ireland has been seen as a trendsetter for open data for the last number of years and was ranked #1 in Europe for 3 years running from 2017 to 2019. And this was accomplished from a nearly standstill position in 2014. So my talk this morning will look at how this has been achieved, the structures which have been put in place to underpin this success, and we will look at the data that is available on Ireland's open data portal, data.gov.ie, as well as taking a quick look at the European level and how that data is being used. I will take you through how the Open Data Engagement Fund works, and we might look at some, if we have time, some successful projects, and just give some tips on how you might improve your application if you wanted to make one. So let me just, sorry, I just get the screen to move on for me now. There we go. So what is open data? So open data is a piece of content that is open to anyone. It's free to use, reuse, and redistribute. And with no real strings attached, really just a requirement to attribute or to share alike. So that's the definition in the Open Data Handbook. So the open knowledge defines open data as anyone who can freely access, use, or modify open data for any purpose. So in Ireland, the prominent license that we use on the portal for the majority of the data is the CC BY 4.0 license, which allows data to be used freely and reused even for commercial purposes. And the only requirement we have is to, sorry, I just have to put on my timer here just to make sure I don't overrun, is to make sure that the data source is attributed. We believe this is important because it identifies the data as real and verifiable data. And as we can all appreciate in these times, that's how necessary this has become. So the Open Data Initiative is about making data held by public bodies available and easily accessible online for reuse and redistribution. Government holds vast amount of data on things like agriculture, the environment, air quality and waste management, just to mention two, transport, energy consumption, health, education, statistics, geological data, we can go on, meteorological data, we all like to know what the weather is like, particularly this time of the year. So And lots of this data is being made available for reuse through the Open Data portal. But there is still a huge amount of data that we in the Open Data Unit are working to encourage for publication, for release and publication through the portal. So what are the benefits of open data and why is it important? The research at the European level, you can see some of the statistics here, they've identified a wide range of benefits from health to energy to increase in productivity. And people say things like data is the new oil. So why is that important? Well, even if we look at our own lives, and today we use data without really thinking about it, we use it constantly, even before we leave the house in the morning, and that's in the days when we did leave the house in the morning. We might often check out Google, we might check out transport apps, traffic apps, weather apps, maybe look at Dublin bikes to see what bikes are free. When events were taking place, you might look up what events were on today and or over the weekend. And of course, we have now COVID data, and there are vast amount of information made available by countries all across the world, including Ireland, on the statistics for COVID. And we've seen how important this data has been to tackling the current pandemic crisis. So this is open data at work, and we don't really think about it that much, but we do expect it to be there. And we are put out if it's not there, or if it doesn't work properly, or if it's not accurate. So it can be very frustrating if you go to the bus stop to catch a bus and it doesn't arrive. I'm from an era where you went to the bus stop in hope more than an expectation, and you had to wait for an unknown amount of time until a bus turned up. And most often, after waiting half an hour or more, 2 or 3 might turn up together. So I love the Dublin bus app and depend on it when I'm leaving the house in the morning or before I leave work in the evening. This is when we were working, of course, in the office. And it becomes particularly important to me when we've weather like this today, and to other people, so we've weather like we have this week. Sorry. Just getting my... Okay, sorry. So to encourage open data, there was seen a need for an open data initiative in Ireland back in 2014. And as mentioned, the government holds vast amount of data and huge amounts of data that would be very useful for reuse, be it by the public, by the public service themselves, or by businesses who might want to develop apps for use by the public. And so it's crucial that the data held by government is made available to be utilised. And as I said, for public bodies to use it for evidence-based decision making. It's also important from a trust point of view, so that there's transparency in government, that the decisions that government are making and the data used to make those decisions can be made available to the public and for scrutiny by others and by people in other political parties or by the media. So the core objectives of the initiative is the publication of high value government data in open format, making it publicly available and freely reusable. And the second objective is to engage with the broader community of stakeholders to promote its use both socially and for economic benefits. Since Ireland began its open data journey, we have made very good progress in and ASCAM is validated by the European Open Data or the European Commission. They carry out an open data maturity survey each year and have done so for a number of years. And you might see there in 2015, Ireland was ranked 20th in Europe for open data maturity. At that stage, we'd really only begun our journey and our portal was only in its infancy. You can see by 2016 that great strides have been made. We've gone from 20th up to 3rd place in Europe. And by 2017, we were ranked 1st in Europe. And we held that position for the following 2 years, for 2018 and 2019. We were, while we actually improved our ranking, or improved our rating, I should say, we were actually passed out by a number of, by Denmark, France and Spain have just gone ahead of us. But we are still within the trendsetter groups in the community. Just move that to the side. You can see us here standing on the little block. And really, that's been a real effort on our behalf and by the public bodies who publish data to improve the quality of data, not only the quantity, but the quality of the data that's been provided on the portal, and the provenance of the data, making sure that the data is reliable on the portal. So you can see we're scoring quite high on all of the areas: impact, quality, the portal and policy. So it's a very good achievement for a small period of time, and for I suppose small resources within the open data unit. But that achievement is really down to the public bodies who are making the data available. So we have, and the reusers and the engagement with the reusers who are using that data and creating an impact for the citizen and for business with the data. We also have improved our standing in the OECD. We are 3rd in the OECD. Now, the last time they carried, that's up to 2019, and we have a new survey to be done this year. We're told it'll be arriving very shortly to us. But again, we were below average in the 2017 OECD survey, and in 2019 we jumped up to 3rd. So you can see that's again a testament to the work that has been done in Ireland on making good quality data available for reuse. Our first steps in open data began, as I said, in 2014, and really this came about as a result. Ireland joined the Open Government Partnership, and that's an organisation which promotes openness, transparency and accountability in governments across the globe. So open data sits under the reform programme in government. And there was no real knowledge of open data really within the department when we started out. And so we engaged with experts in the field and laid strong foundations and strong links with those actors in open data. And as a result, the open data strategy was put in place, and a technical framework to set out the standards that data in Ireland should comply to. And that was done through a series of public consultations on things like what type of license should we use, what sort of technical requirements would be recovered or would be required, the formats that would be required for publishing data in Ireland. And that resulted, as I said, with our open data strategy being put in place, and with our open data portal being put in place in 2015. So the governance, or if you like, it was felt that strong governance structures were required to underpin the Open Data Initiative and to drive the initiative in Ireland. And to this end, an Open Data Governance Board was put in place. And the Open Data Unit was set up, and also an Open Data Advisory Group. So what the Open Data Governance Board it drives the Open Data Initiative, it leads the Open Data Initiative, and it was instrumental in developing the Open Data Strategy. So the members come from a mixture of backgrounds, so from academia, research, business, journalists, civil society, and it includes members such as the government CIO and our chairperson, Dennis Jennings, is one of the founders of the internet. So we have very high and standard of people on the board, but also people with a real interest in open data and ensuring the Open Data Initiative is driven forward. Ourselves in the Open Data Unit, we provide support obviously to the governance board in their work, and we are responsible for the practical implementation of the strategy, and we manage the Open Data Portal, which of course is a very important link in the whole Open Data Initiative. And we would engage with public bodies, meet with public bodies, encourage them to release data for reuse, and provide training initiatives to give public servants the skills to do that. Our Open Data Advisory Group then is a cross-departmental group, and they are open data champions who drive the initiative within their own public body and across other public bodies in their sector. So we would have people representing the local authorities who would drive or would encourage the release of open data and the standardization of data across the local authorities. And okay, so let me go ahead. Open data. So the open data strategy just doesn't sit within its own, or it's not a silo separate to other government strategies. It's linked to and included in items like the public service data strategy, the data sharing bill, the e-government. And also, of course, it's underpinned by the Open Data and Reuse of Public Sector Information Directive, which was rewritten in 2019 and which has to be implemented by July of this year. And what that does is it actually, rather than just encouraging the release of open data, it places an obligation on public bodies to release data for reuse. And under an implementing act, which is being negotiated currently, and under that implementing act will specify data in a number of categories, which will have to be made available for free and in open format, and preferably via API. So it's all building to improve the availability of data across Ireland and across the EU. So the three pillars, I call these our three pillars that underpin open data in Ireland. We have, of course, our open data strategy. So the strategy sets out the objectives and the tasks to be achieved during the life of the strategy. We have, of course, our open data portal, which is our gateway into data that's available in Ireland, and we have our technical framework document. So this the technical framework document sets out the standards for, that data is to be published in, and the means the data is to be published, and that's used by public bodies when they are publishing data on the portal. Our strategy has a number of broad themes in it, including engagement with across the various stakeholders, including the public and business. As I've mentioned, it sets out objectives and milestones to be achieved to improve the quality and quantity and the range of data on the available, and again it sets out a framework for the support and training of public bodies in the release of open data. Just checking my time here to make sure staying on track. There's a lot to get through. So the core objectives of the strategy is to make more data available, make it easily available, make reliable and reusable data that's free to reuse. And of course, I said engagement is a large part of what we do. The technical framework sets out our open data license, our recommended format. So we have recommended open formats, at least to CSV standard. And we've done a large exercise over the last year to remove data on the portal that was below the 3-star standard. So that was below the open data format standard. So there would have been a lot of PDFs, for example, on the portal in the early days. We set out the technical framework also sets out the schema, the recommended standards, which is the DCAT AP, and as well recommends unique resource identifiers to be attached to data. So the license we use is the Creative Commons 4.0 license, and this allows the reuse of data, the free reuse of data, and you can reuse it, reproduce it, share it, and the only requirement is that you acknowledge the provenance of the data, so where the data came from. The DCAT standard is used on the portal, and we are introducing a verification for data on the portal to ensure that the DCAT standard is met. And so things that the DCAT standard require is obviously a name for the data set, what's the subject, where it's located, when it was last updated, and contacts for information you want information on it, and also, of course, if there's any restrictions on the use of the data. And I've mentioned the 3-star data. So CSV is the minimum data we ask for people to publish on. We've asked people to remove anything lower than the 3-star from the portal. And so the majority of the data sits at the 3-star level. We have a small number at 3 and 4-star. But the idea is to improve data to have all data sitting within the 3-star and above, which we have more or less achieved at this stage. Our portal, as I said, is our cornerstone, is the cornerstone of our open data activities, and it's a single repository for Irish public service data that's available in open data. So there are other portals like the CSO, the OSI, but they all link into the Irish open data, or into the data.gov.ie portal, and that in turn links up to the European data portal. So it's harvested by the European data portal. As you can see, there's over 10,000 data sets on the portal from over 120 publishers. The data is categorized for ease of reference, and there are search facilities, and you can access the data through themes of data. You can search through the advanced search if you want to do a more granular search. But I would encourage you to explore the portal for interesting data sets. One of the things that we've added in the last year is the impact stories. This helps us to tell stories with the data on the portal, and this particular one is very interesting. This shows the hospital waiting times for outpatients and inpatients, and you can adjust the parameters as you need to, by year, by area, by a particular hospital, etc., and see what the waiting times are. And we can see here that since the COVID crisis hit, a lot of the waiting times are going in the wrong direction. But I'll leave you can explore that at another time. Again, on the statistics page, you can see this shows here the data sets versus open data. You can see we have a lot, most of the non-open data, so below 3-star has been removed, and we're now nearly at 100%. But again, you can check this out. That's just a list of some of the publishers on the data. I would encourage you as well, if you're using the data and you're asked to complete a survey, if you could, it would be much appreciated, because the information is very valuable and feeds back into what we're providing on the portal and how we approach the data on the portal and how we approach engagement as well. You can see here the users on the data, a large portion of them are research and academia. The general public have a good interest in it, and of course, as does business. This is, as I mentioned, this is our survey, so do help us to improve the data on the survey. Not sure if you're seeing it on the screen, so it just asks you to give feedback. It's purely anonymous, and we ask you just to please consider giving us back feedback if you can. And again, this is just comments that people have given us through the survey, and the overall message is more data, which we are obviously working to provide. Another element on the portal, which is very interesting to check out, is the showcases. So they are use cases of where data has been taken from the portal and either put into a visualization or used for an app. You can see here this app was used to count the trees, again in Fingal County Council, to give them an understanding of the environmental impact of trees in their area. You can see things like when the weather's better, or if you want to go for a nice walk. The water qualities are where the nice beaches are, and the quality of the water on any of those beaches. The Department of Public Expenditure provides information on how your money is spent, and that's good to check out and see where money is going. One other thing I want to mention just quickly is the Open Data and Reuse of Public Sector Information Directive. So this has been rewritten, as I said, and comes into force will be enforced in Ireland by July, and the rest of the EU by July of this year. And what it introduces the principle of open by default in design. So what that means is that public bodies, when they're designing any systems or looking at systems they have in place, they should look at the data in those systems as being made open by default. So you should start from that premise that your data is going to be made open by default and closed as necessary. So obviously any personal data would have to be anonymized or aggregated or removed. But it introduces as well the no charge principle. So public bodies can, in certain circumstances, still charge, but it's really a principle of free reuse. A lot of what we do in the Open Data Initiative is engagement with stakeholders, and we host events. One of the vehicles that has been very successful for us is the Impact Series events, and these are themed meetings. So we would organize events with users of data in a particular theme. So we have done one on transport, as you can see here. We've always done one on the environment, done one on business, and we have done one on arts, culture and heritage, and we have a couple more planned. One we'd like to do is on housing in the near future. And what these do is they bring the people who use the data together for a conversation with the people who publish the data, and it provides very informative insights into one for the publishers, and they learn how people are using the data and what simple things that might improve the data for reuse. And it also gives the reusers of the data direct access to the people who publishing the data, and they establish relationships, and it can be a very good conversation starter and lead to a lot more interaction between the public bodies and the people using the data. I want to talk about the engagement fund just for a couple of minutes before we finish. So the engagement fund is a vehicle that we use to promote the reuse of data on the Open Data portal. It's a grant-based fund, and you can receive between 500 and 5,000 for a project in a number of category areas, be it outreach and engagement. It might be building an application or developing a visualization. And really the criteria is that you use at least 2 data sets from the Open Data portal, and you use at least 2 data sets from the Open Data portal, but you can use them in conjunction with other data that you may want to use from other data sources. You're not confined to that. And it's normally run in the second half of the year. So we normally run it from about June. We normally open applications from about June through to October, and then we would make the grant payments November, December. And there's a couple of criteria. You must agree to obviously provide updates on the data and provide blogs or updates on your project, provide blogs, and we obviously have to ensure that the data, or that the funding has been used for the project that it was intended for. So we receive lots of applications every year, and this is an example of one that has received funding, Tough Souls, and you can see these individuals. I think they walked. I'm not sure. I think it was 4,000 kilometers altogether, and mapped. They went all around the country on all the walking trails, on numerous walking trails, and mapped the trails and taken photographs and provided indications along the trails, and that's all available as a resource on the Open Data portal. So we might want to look at, if you're making an application, how you might like to, or how you could improve your application, because it's a couple of simple things really. You just need to be clear on what you're doing, and what data you're going to use, and what the data is going to be used to do. So at the very start, the brief description should set out a description of what you are going to do, in what your project is going to achieve, and move on then to, and the further down the form, you can give the background and context to the project. But the brief description should concentrate on what your project is actually going to do, and what benefit it's going to provide. If you're providing costs, you should give an estimate of the hours and the day and the rate, if you can, that's being charged. But any other costs that might be included, any other costs that might be incurred. So if you're providing a hackathon, and we're back in the days when we can actually get together in the room again, you might be hiring a venue that might be catering. Again, you can include those sort of costs. There might be advertising. So they're the type of things that you can include in your costs. And you can include your own time as well in the costs. If you're outsourcing elements of the project, so if you're getting a third party to help you, it might be to design something or to provide additional skills to the project. Again, you need to provide the costs and the time required as much as possible. So you're looking to provide as complete an application as possible to the on your application. We're not expecting you to write pages and pages of, but be brief, but be accurate, and and give as full a description as you can. So on the other information, again, it's good to give a context to where the project sits, and so provide a strategic overview. What is the purpose, and where it sits in the broader context, and what benefits might arise from this particular project. And this might seem all a bit obvious, but you would be surprised. We might sometimes get what looks like a very good project, but if it doesn't provide us with the information or give enough details of the information, it's very hard for us to give money to that project. And the other thing I would say is be clear in the data that you are using on the portal. Don't just say something like, I'm going to use the housing data, or I'm going to use transport data. Give a couple of examples of the actual data sets that you are going to use. So that does two things. It demonstrates that you have thought about what you're doing, and that you've already looked at the portal to see what data is available on the portal, and you've already made a calculation as to the data that you are going to use. Okay, I'd just like to thank you for your time this morning, and I believe there may be some questions on the chat, and we will take a look at those, and if anybody wants to raise any questions, please do put them in the chat. Thank you very much for your time. And
Rhoda, sorry, go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say, if you have any queries or any follow-up after today, do send your queries to the open data at per.gov.ie. That's we receive all our queries, and we do our best to answer them as quickly as possible. So you will get a response to there. You can send them to me as well if you want, but to get the quickest response, do send them to open data. Thank you very much. Sorry, Fiona, go ahead.
Thanks very much, Rhoda. That was great. I'm just checking through the chat now for you, and there are a couple of questions, so we might just start with those, and when we get through those, if there's more time, then people can add further questions, or they can unmute and ask a question directly.
Okay. Yeah.
The first one here is from David. It's very informative. He's wondering, do you have any thoughts on the potential benefits or pitfalls of pushing to linked open data, the 5 stars or 5-star open data model? He's based in the Oireachtas, and there may be potential to push some or all of the data there to 5-star, as evident in part of the European Union data sets. He's provided a link there as well, which you mightn't be able to see. So maybe just any thoughts on that initially?
It is, I think the more open we can make data, and the more linked data we can make available, the better. It's really an initiative, and it's seen as an important at an EU level, particularly for interoperability, and for making as much data as possible linked. We don't have very much linked data available in Ireland. It's something we've been in conversation with the CSO, and the CSO are very forthright on this and very progressive on this. But I think the more open data, the more data we can provide as linked data, again, for business benefit, for transparency, and for openness. The more, all I can say is the more we can do to provide more linked data, the better. There are some reservations, I suppose. The more you link data, the more it might be easier to identify individuals given 3 or 4 reference points of data. But I think the people like the CSO are very conscious of that and are very clear in the standards that are required for publishing linked data and ensuring people's privacy isn't infringed in any way. Does that answer the question?
And I'm sure David can get in touch with you directly
yes,
as well.
can,
David, do you want to
definitely.
unmute if you want to comment? Go ahead.
No, that answers it perfectly. Thanks very much, Rhoda.
Okay, no problem, David. You can always get in contact, David, if you want. Yeah.
Okay, we have another question from Ruth. Who's asking, can you tell us a bit more about the impact stories, and are these featured on the Open Data portal?
Yes, the impact stories. Well, we've 2, I suppose, areas that provide stories of how data's been used. We have the showcases, which shows how data has been used, be it for apps or be it for visualizations and representations of data on the portal. But the impact stories was something that we developed ourselves on the portal as a means to demonstrate how you can pull different strands of data together that's available on the portal to create an impactful story. So we have just 2 on the portal at the minute. We have Dublin Bikes, so that's taking the locations of the bicycles. It's taking the how those bikes are used throughout the day, and you can see it at particular times of the day where any bike might be located. So again, it's using different information and different data sets within the portal to provide that information. Now, the data that's there at the minute is actually from, it's about a year old, but there was no point in updating it in the last year, given that nobody was probably out and about that much. But it does, when we were moving around and we were all in around town, it does give a good representation of how that data, or how the bicycles were being used and where they're located at different times of the day. The one that I really like, and I mentioned it in the presentation, is the hospital waiting lists. And because you can pick down, you can filter down to a particular hospital, a particular area, a particular county, and again, that's using lots of different data it's using mapping data, location data, it's using the hospital information, the hospital locations. It's pulling all sorts of strands of data together to show how the data can be used. And we do intend building more of them, but we're very interested if people have examples of how they're using data. We would be delighted to showcase them for people, and particularly if people have something impactful that they'd like to put up as an impact story, we'd be delighted to demonstrate it. But the impact stories are there it's an area on the portal to help people develop their own impact stories. So
thanks, Rhoda. Hope that okay for you, Ruth?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Rhoda.
Okay, thank you, Ruth.
Just wondering, does anybody else have a question? Feel free to unmute and ask it if you do. I have one for Rhoda as well, if there's not. I don't see one. Rhoda, while maybe people are just thinking for final questions, can I just ask one, please? You mentioned you're collecting you have access to open COVID data. I'm just curious to know what type of data are you collecting in regard to COVID at the moment?
Well, we harvest from the OSI's COVID data hub, and it's all the information that's been provided by government, by the HSPC, across all the information on COVID. So it's the rates of COVID, the locations, and one of the things I suppose we've seen really since COVID started as well is interest in other linked information, if you like. So information such as our relevant information on hospitals, information on pharmacies, information, our data sets on the nursing homes and things like that. So all this type of related data is being downloaded along with the COVID data. So people are obviously using that for apps or for generating insight into the pandemic and how the pandemic is unfortunately progressing. Any data that is available on the OSI COVID hub is being harvested into the data portal. So, and again, that's an example of how the portal acts as a central hub for all open data that's available across the public service.
Thanks, Rhoda. Okay, well, if there's no other questions, maybe we leave it there. And if people have further questions, they can contact you directly. And just to say thanks very much, Rhoda, for taking the time to come and speak to us today. It was great to hear about the Open Data Initiative and the Engagement Fund and the portal, and wish you continued success with all of that. And thanks to everyone who attended today.
Thanks, Fiona, you're welcome. And thanks to everyone who attended.